Is there any relevance of native speaker norms? That's a question for TEFLologists. Is it better to focus on form or to focus on forms? That's a question for TEFLologists. If you use a textbook, is your classroom authentic, or should your approach be more learner-centric? From feedback to learner autonomy, we'll discuss it all on TEFLology.
Hi, I'm Matthew.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome back to the TEFLology Podcast, a podcast all about teaching English as a foreign language and related matters, presented by three self-certified TEFLologists.
Okay, so as some of you may know, last month was the TESOL convention held in Seattle, and Rob and I couldn't make it there, but one of us could, and that's Matthew.
It's all me.
And so Matthew returned, was it last week or the week before?
Let's see. So the conference itself was, I think, the 21st to the 24th of March. And yeah, I got back on the 27th, 28th.
Right, so we thought we'd use today's episode to kind of just give an overview of how the conference was. And later in this episode will be... Well, Matt, do you want to explain?
So actually, when I was in Seattle at TESOL, I conducted a couple of interviews. One that we had planned in advance, and another one with somebody I met while there. And so hopefully that'll be interesting and exciting for our listeners.
Yeah. Great. So that's coming up later. But yeah, I guess we're just going to ask you questions. So how was it? But what was the theme of the conference? Was there a theme of the conference?
Yeah, I think so. Was it learning 2.0? Something like that?
Are we only on 2.0 at this point?
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
It was very similar to other conferences in that the theme is the theme and people tend to ignore it. Occasionally, I guess, plenary speakers maybe reference it.
Yeah. Did you see any presentations that were specifically concerned with learning 2.0?
I mean, I don't know what learning 2.0 means exactly.
It's like more learning.
Yeah, the next stage of learning, the next step of teaching and that kind of thing. I mean, I guess probably everything I saw, you could argue is connected to that theme. I didn't see anything that was about the history of TEFL, which I would have enjoyed seeing. But yeah.
Okay.
And you were there for 4 days, is that right?
So actually, I as you mentioned, the conference was in Seattle, and I had never before been to that part of the world. So I decided, the conference itself is, basically 4 days, but I took a full week, so I had some extra time in Seattle to poke around.
So going back to the topic, so last year when we talked to Sandy Millen about the TEFL conference, she said that there were a few kind of unofficial themes that arose during the conference. Do you think there were any unofficial themes that arose? Things that a lot of people were talking about.
Yeah, I think, what was it? Sandy talked about that there was some kind of momentum based on, I think, is it Sylvana Richardson's plenary? I think relating to native speakerism. Was that, we weren't there, but was there that same sense at TESOL?
Not necessarily about native speakerism, although definitely felt the influence of that, maybe. I mean, the topic of native speakerism certainly came up fairly often. Not, at this point, not necessarily as a brand new theme, but as maybe an established thing that people are thinking about.
Right.
And are addressing kind of more, in a more structured way, I guess. The theme, well, it started from the plenary, basically, which was... a guy called Sherman Alexie, who basically has no connection to the world of language teaching at all. But he's local to Seattle, and he's a poet and humorist and writer. He wrote a movie, which I think he produced. I don't think he directed it. I think he produced it, and maybe based on a lot of his own experiences. So he's an indigenous American. Yeah, so he grew up on a reservation. He talked a lot about, in his plenary, he spoke about his experience growing up on a reservation and how he kind of adapted to the world outside the reservation and, the various different communities that he became a member of as a result of all that. And he's a very, very funny guy and a very natural speaker. So he said something like he was speaking to 3,000 people. There was maybe about 3,000 of us in this huge conference room. It's much bigger plenary than any other I've been to. Mm-hmm. It was so big that basically they had TV screens up so people could actually see him.
Right.
Unless you were sitting in the middle of the room, you wouldn't be able to see him that well. Mm-hmm. So you kind of watched on the big screens.
Like a concert.
Kind of like a concert, yeah. Part of the problem is it's a very wide room, so if you're sitting on the sides, you can't see that well. The plenary's talk was part of the kind of opening of the conference. So Dudley Reynolds, the president, I think he's the president of TESOL.
Okay.
He spoke first, and he introduced some other important people in TESOL. There was somebody retiring, so we all had to stand up and clap them. Mm-hmm. They gave out some Teacher of the Year awards, all that kind of stuff. But right from his talk. And throughout that and throughout the plenary, it was a very politically charged atmosphere.
As you might imagine.
Yeah. So I guess we're just 3 months out from the inauguration of the current president.
Yeah.
And so things were referenced in terms of people talked about how Seattle was a very appropriate location because Seattle is kind of considered a safe haven city. Mm-hmm. I think the judge who overturned the first travel ban was from Seattle, and Seattle, as I mentioned before, it was my first time there, but it felt like a very liberal, woolly, lefty kind of place. And so several people mentioned, the fact that they were happy to see this kind of gathering of people from around the world. And how the current administration is not going to stop people from moving around and doing all this kind of stuff. And then there's, kind of talk of resistance and all that kind of stuff. Chairman Alexei in his talked about, a lot of referencing Muslim communities in different parts of the world, etc.
Did you get the feeling that some people couldn't attend the conference because of certain bans and things like that?
At that time, the time around when the conference was beginning, there was no ban in place.
Oh, okay.
The second ban had been issued, but it had already been struck down like the week before.
Right.
So perhaps there were people who, for whatever reason, maybe connected with that, couldn't get in, but not that I was aware of. What I do know is that I think the TESOL kind of, in the last couple months of preparing for it, made an effort to do more sessions or do more kind of promotion in terms of highlighting the role that immigrants play in our business, basically, maybe both in terms of students and teachers moving to different countries.
How did it? To what extent did it feel like an international conference?
So my previous experience with conferences is basically going to JALT, the one we have here in Japan for the last several years, which definitely get the sense that it's Japanese people and then people who work in Japan, foreigners who work in Japan. When I lived in London, I attended TEFL a few times. It didn't feel very international to me at the time, maybe because I was living in London and just walking down the street feels very international. TEFL felt less international than that. But for me, TESOL, it did feel a lot more international. Just looking around and seeing the people who are attending and hearing the different languages being spoken.
And that's, for me at least, that's one of the things that makes a good conference is the atmosphere, the venue, and having kind of chance kind of meetings with people, one of which we'll show later. We'll let people listen to later.
Yeah.
But who else did you meet and come across? And
not that many people. I even though it's a new conference for me, I still approached it in my slightly cynical way of, I'm not there to meet people. I guess that is a great reason to go to conferences.
Yeah.
But
what, to not meet people?
No, to meet people, but that's not necessarily why I go.
Okay.
No, obviously you chat to people sitting next to you in different sessions. It was I've never worked in the States for language teaching, and so that's a whole kind of scene that I know nothing about. So it was interesting to hear other people's. The people's experience with that.
Yeah, there does seem to be a big difference between. I mean, obviously, I'm British, so. But speaking to American ESL teachers, there seems to be a big difference between American and British ESL, and then obviously also the rest of the world.
Yeah, of course.
Which also matters.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was most of the Americans or the people who worked in America that I met there worked in universities. But again, not getting a lot of information about it, but it did feel quite different.
And so did you spot any celebrities?
TESOL celebrities?
No, just general Seattle celebrities.
I kept an eye out for Dan Savage, but I never spotted him. He apparently he's the neighborhood where my Airbnb was. Apparently that's where he hangs out a lot. But I never saw him.
That's a shame. How about TESOL celebrities?
Yes, I mean so it may be continuing with the theme of resistance. I guess I don't know what else to call it. I went to a talk with Keith Folse and Scott Thornbury, and there were two other panelists, and I'm sorry that I've forgotten their names, but it was a story about textbook writing textbooks, and what I didn't realize when I went in, and from the blurb it wasn't that clear, I felt, and I went in maybe more because I was interested because I'm involved in writing a textbook for the course I work on. And it was specifically about topics, but it was clear that it was a talk about LGBTQI. I think is the it's not an acronym, whatever it is. Anyway, that representation in textbooks, and all four speakers seem to have kind of direct experience with it. They're all materials developers. It was, and again, it felt the feeling in the room was very much, this is something that we can be working towards, and making a change in this direction. Not that the panelists were all saying like there has to be more, no matter what, we have to get more representation in the textbooks. Right. It was very much, we understand why there isn't so much. There's certain cases where there doesn't have to be, etc. But I guess their main issue was that it should be a topic that's talked about and discussed.
Do you think that is something that you'll include in this textbook you were just mentioning, that I obviously know nothing about?
I mean, we've since the last year, I can't remember, or the year before, we've included a very, very brief mention of same-sex marriage in Japan.
Right.
I don't know, we have 4 characters in the book. We don't say anything about the characters other than their opinions on very academic topics.
Yeah. You should provide a biography of each one.
Could do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm in a kind of fortunate position in that I don't have a big, the course book I work on is produced in-house, as it were. And I don't have a publisher telling me, what can and can't go into it.
Right.
Whereas that's not the case, obviously, with most.
I guess you have a lot of teachers giving their feedback.
Also,
well. And students, I guess, to an extent.
Yeah.
So another reason you were there was to obviously to present yourself.
Oh yeah.
So how did that go? What kind of topic were you talking about?
Yeah. So this is maybe the area in which I felt I got the most out of the conference, which is the topic I presented on with 2 colleagues was about a framework we developed in our institution to accommodate special needs students. And the presentation itself, I think, was fine. We were just kind of presenting it here. This is what it is. Here are a few examples of how it worked, and areas in which we want to improve it, etc. But what was great is that not that we had a great response from the audience in terms of our presentation. But a lot of people had questions and were curious because they themselves are involved in accommodating special needs students in their different teaching contexts. So there was actually a woman there, I think from the University of Oregon, which is, they're very active in this field. And they were actually, one of my colleagues went to a kind of meetup in the evening that night for people who were trying to kind of develop this further. So we made a contact there. There was a guy who said he's been kind of consulting universities in Asia for many, many years in terms of special needs students. So we made contact with him. The person who I interviewed, who we're going to listen to later, is also very active in that area in his university in Venezuela. So yeah, just in terms of, first of all, seeing what other people out there are doing was great, and making those connections, which I guess is a great thing that can come out of a conference.
That's interesting, because that was also one of the themes that Sandy Millen identified as being an emergent theme of the TEFL conference last year, special educational needs.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe these kinds of issues are kind of travelling.
Yeah.
I
think so. Great. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons I was at TESOL was to record an interview for our podcast. That was with Barbara Hoskins Sakamoto and her two colleagues that she wrote the Let's Go series of children's course books with, Ritsuko Nakata and Karen Fraser. But actually, when I was chatting to Barbara before we started interviewing, she said that she wanted me to meet somebody who was there. And actually, he came along after we finished the interview. This fellow, Miguel Mendoza, from Venezuela. So one of the sessions that Barbara presented was called Lives of Teachers. And it was basically talking about challenges that teachers face and teachers working in different situations and some of the commonalities that we all have. And Miguel and one of his colleagues from Venezuela was also supposed to come, but because of the sort of political situation in Venezuela, couldn't get a passport in time. Okay. But anyway, just chatting with Miguel, it seemed like we had a lot of interests in common. So he started talking about podcasting and professional development related to that. He talked about special needs students. And so I thought, it'd be great to chat to him. And he had an interesting story to tell. So for that reason, I thought, get the old IC recorder out and hear what he has to say. So that's what we're going to listen to now. Okay, so we are here on, is it day 3 now? Day 4? I'm not sure of the...
Day 3.
Day 3. Yep.
Yeah, day 3.
Okay. Of the TESOL 2017 convention here in Seattle. This is Matthew, and I'm sitting here with my new friend who I just met yesterday, Miguel Mendoza. We were introduced by Barbara Hoskins Sakamoto. And so I'd just like, if it's okay with you, Miguel, to ask you a few questions. First of all, about what you're doing here in Seattle, and then maybe also about your teaching context in general.
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, you presented today, and you have something tomorrow as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, first I teach English for academic purposes at a public university in my country. It's one of the oldest universities there, and I teach English to librarianship students. I'm here because I was sponsored by the American Embassy, and I have had so far 2 presentations. One was about podcasts. The other one was about the lives of teachers with Barbara Sakamoto. And tomorrow I'm going to have a presentation related to disability, inclusive education.
Yeah, great. And so you mentioned you were sponsored by the American Embassy. You didn't mention which country you came from.
Venezuela. I'm from Venezuela, and I live in Caracas, which is the capital city of the country.
Okay, great. So your section of the presentation today about the lives of teachers, what was the kind of main point of your talk there?
Well, the idea was basically to share with some of the teachers the challenges we have to face, which up to a certain extent they are similar. There are certain differences, but they are similar, right? In our case, in Venezuela, whatever it is that happens to teachers there is related to the political situation of the country. I was mentioning there what we are going through, what's happening there, and how that affects us as teachers. For example, I started talking about salaries. So if you are at a public university and you are an instructor, for example, the salary that you're going to get monthly is going to be $35, which is nothing for a teacher. I mean, how are you going to survive with $35? Now, one of the things I was saying is that, okay, we are earning or getting $35 per month. But one of the problems is that the government, whenever they want, they raise salaries. But when they raise salaries, everything becomes pretty expensive as well. There is a hyperinflation in our country, so it doesn't stop. So sometimes we would like the government not to raise the salaries, so at least we are going to more or less know what to do. So it's a difficult situation for us because, for example, if you want to get medicines, or if you want to go to a supermarket and you want to buy anything, or you go to a market, things are so expensive that you have to definitely think carefully what you are going to get. I do remember Evelyn Izquierdo, which is a colleague of mine, and she was supposed to participate also in this presentation. She was not able to do it because of her passport. It takes months and months for a Venezuelan to get a passport. And the reason the government gives for not issuing passports is because there is no material, there is no paper to print passports. So she was not able to make it today because she couldn't get her passport on time. So is there a problem for teachers? Is that a challenge for teachers? Yes, because she had an opportunity to participate in a face-to-face event in a different country, and she was not able to make it. So that affects her professionally speaking, development, professional development, and all that. Now, apart from salary, another thing that I was talking about was insecurity at universities. I mean, every day there's a robbery in a faculty or in a school in our university. Most teachers, if they can, they locked the doors just to prevent anything from happening inside the classroom. But it's a little bit difficult because when you are outside the classroom, teachers and students, they can be robbed at any time, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and it seems to be that authorities cannot do anything about it. In fact, they haven't done anything about it so far. So the consequence of that, apart from salaries and all that stuff, is that faculties, at least the one I work for, you notice that it is becoming empty up to a certain extent. That is, teachers are leaving the faculty, they're leaving the country. Now teachers are living in Peru and living in Ecuador and Brazil. The same thing happens with students. Students are, they start the career and they quit because they want to live in a country where at least they get some sort of security and they can sort of live decently there. So another thing, apart from insecurity, not being able to buy what you want to buy as a teacher, is research, for example. If you want to do research, sometimes you don't feel that motivated to do that. If you're going to be promoted because of the research you've made, your salary or the raise that you're going to get for the research you've done is nothing. Another reason is that you have to work for somewhere else. So you must have a second job, a third job, in order, once again, to get by, to survive. So you don't have time to do research. So teachers, once again, do prefer to quit and work somewhere else where his or her work is going to be acknowledged. Another reason is professional development. Okay, the university cannot pay for teachers' professional development for courses and all that stuff, face-to-face or online, because we have a tight budget. But like 3 or 4 years ago, we were able to pay for our very own courses if we wanted, at least online. But now we can't, because we were supposed to get at least every year we could ask for a certain amount of money in dollars, and with that amount of money we were able to buy books online, pay for online courses. That's something we cannot do anymore because we're not getting that kind of money. So that's a problem not only related to professional development, but once again it's quite connected to research. And another reason, it's got to do with connectivity, because a solution could be, okay, I cannot attend face-to-face conferences, events, I cannot pay for my very own course online, but at least I can go to the net and enroll in a free webinar, for example. But right now, especially this year, you are going to find places in the capital city where teachers can only get connected for 2 or 3 hours. It can be in the morning, in the afternoon, you never know. Or sometimes connectivity is very slow in the morning or in the afternoon. Once again, you never know. So it is really difficult for you to say, yes, I'm going to sit and participate in this webinar, or I'm going to participate in this conference via Skype. It's so difficult to do that. So once again, you do not feel motivated. And we tend to believe that it's a systematic plan on the part of the government to push the teachers away. So they leave the country, or they simply get used to that situation because there's nothing you can do. At least that's what you feel, right? So that's basically some of the things we have to go through in our country.
So you mentioned this morning about those teachers who maybe have that attitude that there's nothing you can do, and you mentioned how you think that's a very dangerous attitude.
It is.
So what are some things that you think can be done?
The thing is that it's really difficult because what I do is that I try to participate actively in all the activities we're invited to kind of let the government know that we do not agree with the different policies they're implementing and all that other stuff, or the way the country is going. I'm very active on Facebook and Twitter, social networks, to not only let people know from abroad what's going on, but also for my students, because they're always checking whatever it is that I'm posting on Facebook. So when we're at the university, we're always talking about it, and the responsibility we've got as citizens while we're in the country to try to do something about the situation of the country, whatever it is that we can do there.
That's very interesting. I went to a talk earlier this afternoon about writing textbooks. And the kind of main focus was this debate of do you mention politics in textbooks? Does the teacher give their own opinion about these kind of things? But I think if that's going to happen in any context, it seems like your context would be an appropriate place for it to happen.
Yeah, and we've got to do it because for some reason teachers do not like to talk about politics in the classroom. But I think we should. Because our responsibility is not only to teach content, but we are also kind of guiding our students to face certain things outside the university, long life learning, right? And part of it is being critical of the things that they're going through and the responsibility they've got as citizens. So yes, I do believe we do have a responsibility as teachers when it comes to politics.
Yeah, right. And how did you... So your presentation was part of something arranged by Barbara Sakamoto, and how did you get connected with her?
I met her a long time ago, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, because she enrolled in one of the courses I was co-moderating along with Evelyn Izquierdo. It was about podcasting in the EFL/ESL classroom, and she was one of the participants there. So I met her there, and for some reason she invited me then to write a post for her Teaching Village blog, and I wrote a post about it, reflecting a little bit on how I ended up becoming a teacher, because initially I wanted to be a graphic designer or something like that, and I ended up being a teacher. And then after that, she invited me to participate in ITDI, this institute, and I've participated there, writing for her blog and attending webinars and stuff like that. And then I met her face-to-face, I think 3 or 4 years ago in Glasgow. And from then on, we've been in contact.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned at the conference here, you also talking about podcasting.
Yeah.
What was the main?
Well, basically, I wanted to sort of reflect a little bit on how relevant podcasts are now. Because I used to co-moderate this session like 2 years ago about podcasting. And I wanted to know, because the technology changes pretty quickly, and maybe there could be something way much better than podcasts. And But no, I mean, in fact, right now people are really interested in seeing how they can consume information pretty fast and quickly. So technology is responding to it. So, for example, people are interested in finding these mobile apps that can help them get information very quickly. And podcasts are very easy to adapt to those technological changes. So, for example, we've got this iPhone 7. It doesn't have the headphones jack anymore. AirPods, virtual reality, and podcast seems to be one of those tools that can easily adapt to all the technological changes that we are having right now. Also, apps are becoming stronger. People are a bit more familiar, especially younger people, with podcasts, how to upload, download, find, and how to edit podcasts and stuff like that. And also I wanted to kind of compare the tools we were using at the time and if they were offering the same service at this moment nowadays, like Podomatic and Vocaroo, Audacity, which is a software, and all that. So that's what I was doing today.
Okay, great. And then finally, you also said you're talking about students with disabilities.
Yeah.
And how are you involved with that?
Well, when I started at the university, like 17 years ago, I noticed a group of students who were having certain difficulties to do their tasks, to kind of start and finish a semester and all that. And along with another teacher, we started talking about it. And then two other students from our school also noticed these students. And we got together, we were talking a little bit on what to do, and then we decided to create this organization, which is a committee for our school to provide support to students with disabilities. And it's got two main objectives: academic support and sensitizing teachers to understand that students with disabilities have got a place at the university. The academic support is basically helping students when they are going to enroll in their courses, how many subjects, depending on their condition, they can enroll, with which teachers they can enroll their subjects in. We keep track of whatever it is the student is doing during the semester, and at the end of the semester we evaluate what happens with them, their performance and all their stuff.
Right.
In connection to sensitizing, campaigns, workshops, we are working with some other organizations in our faculty, like the Student Service Unit. There's another organization for the university, and we're working together to guarantee that the authorities, especially the authorities and teachers, understand that students with disabilities are a priority. So what our main interest in, especially as part of this committee, is to tell students that, teachers, that our responsibility is not only thinking about the strategies students with disabilities need in the classroom. That's part of the whole picture. We also need to provide support to students with disabilities outside the classroom. And because we are supposed to be agents of social change. So if that is so, we have to understand what disability is. We have to get closer to our students, because generally what teachers do is that, okay, you're in the classroom, let's see what I can do for you. Yes, there is a legal framework, and I've got to try to provide some help to you. And that's not enough. I think that if I really want to include students with disabilities, I have to acknowledge that there is a person there, not someone with not a disability, but someone there, and I need to know him. And by knowing this person, I can provide the right support these students is going to need. Also, the family is important for us. Okay. Because the family can tell us a little bit as well what to do to provide support to students with disabilities. So we are doing lots of things. For example, out of our community service, we created the Association for Students with Disabilities in our faculty. What for? To empower students with disabilities to fight for their rights as well. So we've turned this into a political issue as well.
Yeah.
So it's like a sort of grassroots movement in our faculty. Also, we created an organization to provide support to students with disabilities at the university level in higher education. What for? To kind of get the resources outside the university, the resources we're going to get at the university, to get it outside the university. That's called social responsibility in our country. And we created that organization last year, and I hoped this year we're going to start working on it, especially for physical adaptations in the faculty.
Okay, great. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Miguel, for speaking to me today. If people want to find you or see what you do on the internet, what's the best way?
Well, Twitter at Mike08. Facebook, Miguel Mendoza, but I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to, because there are many Miguel Mendozas.
We can include some links in the notes for the podcast.
Okay, great. And that's it, or my email is mmendoza97 at gmail.com.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that, Matt. That was really interesting. And yeah, I think maybe that's typical of what conferences should be about: meeting, making connections, and having interesting conversations with people.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, we'll see what the listener response is like. But I think it would be nice to hear. Maybe we tend to interview kind of big names in the TEFL world. And Miguel's not a big name, but I think what he's doing in Venezuela is very interesting stuff, and it is a context very different from ours. So hopefully it'll be interesting for our listeners to hear.
Okay, so we'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, if you'd like to contact us, you can email us, TEFLology@gmail.com. Like always, we tell you every episode, follow us on Twitter at TEFLology. Listen to old episodes at TEFLology-podcast.com. And you can also like us on Facebook. You can follow us there too, I guess. But like us on Facebook first and foremost. And also, don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes as well. We can't emphasise that enough.
We could. We could emphasise it too much.
I think we have.
We have done.
I don't know. 4 people have paid heed to that. So.
Yeah, thanks for your reviews.
They were good, those of you who wrote them.
5-star only.
Well, I think we only want good reviews, right?
No, I don't know. I could take a bit of constructive
criticism. That's counting out half of our audience.
So it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye.